Mr. Jimmy Jam. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful, Clay. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I am really excited about this. I mean, I'm from West Philadelphia.
Yep.
Philly soul is just everything to me. It's in the fabric of my memory, and I love that you're highlighting this. So this is getting a lot of excitement. What inspired you? What inspired you, and of course, the one and only Terry Lewis to
Yeah.
tackle this project and tell this story of Gamble and Huff?
Well, I think the thing that started it was a gentleman named Peter Afterman, and he's the executive producer of Jam and Lewis documentary that we're working on. And during kind of as we were putting our project together, he just said to me, "Who should there be a documentary on who maybe hasn't had one yet?" And we said the Mighty Three. And he
Mm,
says, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, Gamble, Huff, and Thom Bell."
mm,
And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because there would be no Jam and Lewis without them."
mm,
And he said, "Wow." He said, "That's interesting. So let's look into that and see what's happening." And we decided we would go into Philly and just have a meeting and just talk about the possibility, I guess I would say, in doing it and how they would feel about it. And they seem to be into it. And we feel like we can tell the story through the eyes of producers and writers, which we are, and so much of what we've done, we've patterned ourselves after that. And the Philadelphia music scene as a whole, in my growing up, was such a part. I mean, all the songs I wrote were trying to be,
mm.
whether it was Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes
Oh my gosh.
or the Stylistics or Blue Magic or any of those great songs and those great groups and the great production that came out of that area. So I just feel like we have a reverence for it, an understanding of it, but also the bigger story to be told, we think, with Gamble, Huff, and Bell is also the fact that things that we maybe take for granted, like the fact that there's a Black Music Month, is because of, Kenny Gamble, and Deanna Williams and the people that were involved in, getting that on the in Congress in order to get passed, right? So the fact that we celebrate Black Music Month every year, he's had a part of that. And so there's just a lot of stories in there that we think should be told. And we're at the point of our careers we want to do things we haven't done before, and we haven't directed a documentary before. So uh, we're figuring it out as we go, and very happy about it, though, to be, approved basically to tell that story.
But I have to ask you about a few artists because of that era, and I'm curious to know if you ever worked with them or met them. And although she signed with Philadelphia International Records later, one of my favorite artists is Phyllis Hyman. And I wanted to know if you ever
Mm.
met her or had any memories of her or anything like that.
No. Well, here's the funny thing about Phyllis Hyman. There's a picture in our studio of us with Phyllis Hyman.
Oh
And I
wow.
can't remember. It was probably a Philadelphia music event.
Oh wow.
We always used to come into Philadelphia for the I Am conference
Yeah.
that they would do. I remember that was one of the first places we brought Sounds of Blackness. So this would have been like 91 maybe. And I remember we brought Sounds of Blackness in for that. And I remember a lot of meeting just a ton of Philadelphia artists. And I think that might have been maybe where the Phyllis Hyman picture came from. But yeah, there's a picture of us with her, but we never worked together though.
Oh wow. You know, I got to tell you, it's funny. Optimistic. You and Mr. Terry Lewis, y'all produce so much music. I love Optimistic by Sounds of Blackness. I just found out last week y'all produced that. I don't know how I possibly like y'all music just creeps up like, oh my God, they did that song too. This just
Yeah.
happened to me last week. I listen to this song
Yeah.
at least once a week. It's one of my gets me through, rough times. I had no idea y'all rocked. I mean, I don't know how I missed that in my music brain. That's a brilliant, brilliant gospel track that just took over.
Thank you. That song was pivotal in a lot of ways for Terry and myself. And I always say that song, it's tough to use the word favorite because favorite can be a whole lot of different things. But it's definitely the song that 100 years from now, if there's a time capsule that says Jam and Lewis on it and somebody opens it, that would be the song that would play.
I
Because I think it
mean,
explains everything about where Terry and I are beat wise, musically, lyrically, and the fact that, we think of music as the divine art. And we
yeah.
feel like that song, because of what you just mentioned, it gets you up, it makes you feel better. We need that. We need sonic healing right now in
Yeah.
a big way. And I just think that a good dose of optimistic is is good medicine for that.
And don't get me started on Miss Ann Nesby. Lord have
I
mercy, she can
know
sing.
the
Don't
voice,
get me
the
started.
voice.
Just a couple of geeky music questions before you go.
Yes, sir.
Y'all have produced, wrote 16 number one hits from, of course, Janet to George Michael to Karen White to Boyz II Men, Usher, Mariah Carey. Is there one that y'all were surprised that it hit number one, that it was so big that you were like, oh, wow, I mean, I love the song, but I didn't see that coming? Was there ever one that you were surprised by its own success?
I was literally surprised every song that went number one, quite honestly, because that meant that we had to be at that point better than 99 songs, other songs,
Right.
which was crazy. But a song that I think of, well, probably because I was talking about it earlier today, actually, was When I Think of You, Janet,
Mm.
which was
Her
our
first number
first
one. Yeah.
number one.
Yeah.
And I remember when we played the album for her brothers. Michael wasn't there, but all the other brothers were. And I remember we played the album, and I remember when we were done playing the album, they said, "That one song, that's going to be a number one song." And we said, "Which one? Nasty?" They said, "No, no, no." And we named all the songs. They said, "No." They said, "It starts off with piano." And I said, "When I Think of You?" They said, "Yeah, that's the one. That's going to be a
Mm.
number one record." And I was like, "Huh?" And of course, third single went number one.
It was
And
the
they were
third
right.
single?
It
Oh,
was the third
wow.
single. What Have You
Oh,
Done for Me
wow.
Lately was first, went
Wow.
number one on the R&B chart.
Right.
Nasty was second, went
Mm.
number one on the R&B chart. It went so it was number one. So What Have You Done for Me Lately? Number one on the R&B chart, number four on the pop chart.
Mm.
Nasty number one on the R&B chart, number three on the pop chart. And then When I Think of You, number one on the pop chart and number three on the R&B chart.
Wow.
So we kind of swapped positions if I remember correctly. But yeah, that was the very first one. So that one being number one probably was not only a surprise, but because it was the first one. I think
Wow.
that's
Wow.
what it sticks out to me.
Two more quick questions. One of my favorite songs, my favorite karaoke song, is "Rub You the Right Way" by Johnny Gill, and I just can't recall if I've heard you talk about that.
I love it.
It's cheeky, but just a quick memories on where that song came from. It's the best, the best.
I'll tell you not so much about making the song, but I'll tell you an experience that I loved with that song. So, Tiger Woods is a huge Janet Jackson fan.
Oh wow.
And I remember back when she was on the Velvet Rope tour. So this was like 97, 98.
I was at that tour. I went.
Okay. All right. And I remember we had done some things for his charity and stuff. So we all happened to be in Vegas. And he said, "Hey, I'd love to see Janet, whatever." So we had rearranged it. And I remember his guys that were with him, it was like all of his friends and stuff. And they all said, he probably won't stick around. He never really sticks around at a show, but thank you very much for the tickets and whatever. So anyway, she does the whole show. We're walking backstage afterwards, and all of his guys are there, and he's there. And he goes, "Man, that was an awesome show." And I looked at his guys and I said, "I thought he didn't stick around." He said, "Oh no, he stuck around for every minute of that." So afterwards, we go to the casino, and he's got, of course, got his own table, right? And he goes, "See if Janet will come down." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "I'm in my pajamas." And we said, "Doesn't matter. It's a private room." She said, "Okay." She comes down. Literally, they play craps. And the
Mm.
whole time they play craps, they would go, when they're shaking the dice, they'd go, "Rub you the right way." And then they say, "Stroke," and they throw the dice. That turned into a whole thing for that whole night with Tiger and
Wow.
his buddies and Janet. And it was the
Wow.
most surreal thing. So when I think about "Rub You the Right Way," yeah, it's a cool song. It was very successful, but that's the memory I always will be. And his guys, whenever we see them, they always go, "Stroke." To
Yeah.
this day, man.
I used to pay for the video on Video Jukebox back in the day. Remember
The
back in the
video
day?
jukebox, yeah.
Those were the days. Those were the days.
Yeah,
We're
man.
we're running out of time. I could talk to you forever. Listen, we're all gonna have our eyes on the Gamble and Huff documentary. Of course, the documentary for you and Mr. Terry Lewis. I just want to say, and I know you have a Luther song that you
Yeah,
are. It's coming soon. There's so much going on. But from
yeah.
my soul, from a kid from West Philly, thank you for your music. It got me through on cassette, on LP, on CD. Thank you. Just thank you for your music, Mr. Jimmy Jam. It's changed our lives. It means so much to everybody. Really, really thank you. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Clay.